301 priests, more than 1,000 children, 70 years, and at every level of the Catholic Church in Pennsylvania, leadership knew and chose to protect the institution instead of the victims. The Pennsylvania Grand Jury Report, released in August 2018, was the product of an 18-month investigation into 6 of the state's 8 Catholic dioceses. Investigators reviewed 500,000 internal church documents, files the diocese had never intended for public view. Those documents did not depict isolated failures by a few rogue priests. They revealed a coordinated system. Victims were identified and reported to superiors, and then the institution managed the problem. The priest was moved to another parish. Families were counseled to keep quiet. Records were filed under coded language so a later reviewer would not immediately understand what they contained. The phrase "to be followed up closely" recurs throughout the files. It did not mean what it appeared to mean. It meant the victim was to be monitored, to ensure silence, not to ensure safety. The internal files used language designed to obscure. A priest who had abused a child would be described in the records as needing spiritual guidance or additional pastoral support. A complaint from a family would be logged as a boundary issue. Transfers were documented as routine reassignments with no note of the real reason. Time and again, the grand jury found that when a bishop received a credible complaint, the response was not to remove the priest from ministry, not to alert law enforcement, not to take steps that would protect children in the priest's next parish. The response was to manage information, to hire attorneys, to negotiate with families, to frame abuse as a spiritual failing rather than a criminal act. Cardinal Donald Wuerl, who served as Bishop of Pittsburgh before leading the Washington Archdiocese, was connected to 236 cases in the Pittsburgh files. The report documented his signature on transfer documents that reassigned priests with substantiated abuse allegations to new ministry positions. He denied specific knowledge of individual cases. The files show otherwise. He resigned his Washington post in October 2018, 2 months after the report's release. He faced no criminal charges. The statute of limitations had expired for nearly every case. Victims named in the files are now adults, some in their 60s and 70s, who carried these crimes for decades without a legal path for accountability, because Pennsylvania's statutes of limitations were among the most restrictive in the country. The grand jury named victims where it could, with consent, and described each case in clinical, documented terms that made the scale undeniable. One man, identified only by case number, wrote to a bishop in the 1980s reporting abuse. The bishop's preserved response. The priest was sent for psychological evaluation. A report labeled him minimal risk, and he was returned to full ministry within months. That priest abused additional children. The evaluation had been conducted by a psychologist retained and paid by the diocese. Here, at the 70% mark of the narrative, comes the central, incontrovertible finding. The diocese did not merely fail to stop the abuse, they actively concealed it. They destroyed records. They retained others in files marked confidential that were never shared with law enforcement. The 500,000 documents that formed the grand jury's basis were produced only through subpoena, without the state's power to compel. Those files would still be in locked cabinets, invisible to the public and to prosecutors. The legal aftermath illustrates how institutional power shapes accountability. Because of then existing limitations laws, the grand jury concluded that criminal charges could be filed in only 2 cases from its investigation. A 2019 attempt to create a 2-year retroactive civil window for older survivors failed in the Pennsylvania Senate after intense church lobbying. Later reform extended future limitations, but did not provide the retroactive access that would have let most survivors sue. In 2021, a 2-year retroactive window was enacted and took effect in 2023. By 2024, thousands of civil suits had been filed. Cardinal Wuerl retired with his full pension and remains a member of the College of Cardinals. The Vatican did not remove any of the bishops named in the report from the church hierarchy. The unanswered question persists. How many dioceses not covered by this grand jury maintain identical files today, cataloged under euphemisms and hidden behind confidentiality? The records revealed a deliberate institutional calculus, preservation of reputation over protection of children. Subscribe to Case Files TV, because the institution that kept these files also gets to decide who sees the next ones.